Life in the United States, growing up in the uh, end of the 20th century, as someone who is neither straight nor gay, was a very strange uh, and confusing way to grow up, let me tell you. So, a little backstory here. I do want to give a little bit of a explanation for the bread pillow and terrible lighting and sound and all this before I go any further. I've wanted for a very long time to explain my experience and my understanding of microlabels. However, I have had um, a myriad of health issues that have prevented me from being able to really do this the way I'd like to do it. Actual production values and scripted and edited and all of the things that a good YouTube series is going to have. Uh, you know, kind of got to this place where I'm like, do it or don't. And so, this is what I'm physically capable of doing. And so this is how we're doing this. If this means no one watches, whatever. I'm just putting these ideas out there and the world can take them or leave them. But anyway, back to the subject at hand, which is mythicals. Quick definition of what I would call mythical. Now, this is, of course, very, very slang, subjective term, not necessarily something that there's agreed upon definition of. But when I say mythicals, what I mean is all queer identities that are not gay or straight. Now, obviously, the big two that actually get included in the main LGBT acronym, bisexual and transgender, they get a little bit more visibility than the rest of us do. But they still face a lot of challenges that gay people or straight people don't. It's just different. Other thing I want to kind of preface this here, this is not an oppression Olympics. We're not in any sort of competition here. I am not going to say anything about the relative challenges of growing up as a pan-oriented, aegosexual, aromantic, as I did, versus growing up as, a lesbian or a gay person or anything else. Because, honestly, we all have our own challenges. And doesn't do me any good to try to compare my experience to somebody else. I'm just telling you how things are for me. And for people like me, as best I can. So, that's where we are. So, microlabels. A lot of people look at them very dismissively. And there is in the generation after mine, the Zoomers, there seems to be this sort of, disdain for labels. Oh, I don't believe in labels. And I understand that sentiment. It's nice. But labels allow us to find communities, to share ideas, to talk about things. And I always say that a label is only valuable when it is enthusiastically embraced by the person using it. That means I can say I am a romantic. That does not mean that anyone else is allowed to assign that label to me. So there's the difference. I think the nuance that some people miss with labels is that, a label that is found and embraced by somebody is a valuable thing. A label that is forced on someone else or assigned to someone against their will or without their permission, without their consultation, even if they wouldn't push back against it, it's not great. So let's not do that. Let's not label other people. But let's allow ourselves to find labels that feel good to us and use them if we choose to. So I'll kind of, since I'm kind of doing introductory video here, kind of give a little bit of background on uh, the microlabels I'm most familiar with, just sort of briefly. So I grew up and I just always knew that getting married just wasn't something I wanted to do. It was always a if, it was never a when. You know, every little girl imagines a pretty dress or whatever. But if I did go there, it was always, well, if I ever get married, I would do blah, 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 blah. And I was never interested even in those wild theoretical imaginings in being a bride or changing my last name or, you know, sleeping in bed with somebody else. You know, none of that ever was ever anything I was ever all that interested in. And so I always knew that I was aromantic. But when I was growing up, I was born in 1982. You know, I was a child in the 80s, an adolescent in the 90s, and a college student in the oddies. There literally wasn't a word for what I am. It just didn't exist. Like, the terms that I used to describe myself previously, pan-oriented, aegosexual, aromantic, none of those terms existed until relatively recently. It's not that I wasn't those things. It's just there was literally no word for me to use to describe how I felt. And I had no way of understanding that there were other people like me. That it wasn't just some weird malfunction of who I was, but rather I was just part of a community of people that are just normal people, all different sorts of people, all ages and races and backgrounds, hobbies. You know, we're just people who, in my case, I'm aromantic. I lack I lack romantic attraction. Which, that was the tricky one for me. So I always knew I didn't want to be in a relationship, but I experienced sexual attraction, so I knew even after I was introduced to the term asexual that didn't fit me. You know, I definitely find quite a few people attractive. It's not that. It's just that I'm aegosexual. You know, it's always depersonalized. Like, I appreciate them, I like them, I find them attractive and arousing, but they can stay over there and I can stay over here and we're all fine. You know, that's me. And then the parent-oriented thing is I'm just indifferent to the gender of whoever I find interesting, attractive, whatever. I want to appreciate them. I certainly do not want to date them. But I do find them attractive, you know? So, now that I have the terms for how I've always felt, I've been able to find communities for people to gather and discuss. I mean, I'm part of a group of people on the asexual spectrum who are over 30. I mean, there's... I can't even tell you what that's like. It feels so liberating to talk to people who understand so much what it's like to have grown up as we did. Because asexual people who are growing up today, their experience is just different than ours. You know, I don't know that it's easier necessarily or harder necessarily. I just know that it's different. And so it's so nice to be able to connect with people who get it. And I love having these resources. And so that's why I talk about being these things as often as I can, because before I heard these terms, I didn't have the community that I feel comfortable in and a part of. And like, I'm not sort of part of it, but kind of removed. Like, it's mine. I have those communities. I have places where I belong unreservedly. And it is just, it's great. It's wonderful. So I want to talk about a multitude of different microlabels in a little bit more detail so that those terms just get talked about more. You know, even if I don't start much of a discussion, I just want to put these things out there. So I'm going to try as often as I can to come back and get a little bit more detailed about the various mythical identities that I know about, because why not? I can. I mean, do I need more reason than that? I don't think so. So they will be unflattering, lit, and the angle's not going to be great, and I don't care, because the ideas are more important than the window dressing. So, peace.